Hello, welcome to part 1 of my Grundig 2066. I figured while I'm waiting for the 1 or 2 days a week, possibly I get to spray that cabinet for the 38.5B I would start on my next project. So I picked this up about 2 years ago at one of our club's radio auctions. Basically, when I first brought it home, I figured, well, it's German, it's probably still good. So I plugged it in, and, well, I tested the tubes first, and most of them were either dead or very, very, very weak, including the Millard output tube, which is, it uses an EL84, and it's actually one of their XFR1 versions, I believe. And it's one of those tubes that goes for a couple $100. So that was kind of depressing, because I certainly was not going to be replacing it with a $200 output tube. But I was able to get it to tune in FM. AM did not work. The AM sections of the tubes didn't seem to want to work, or they were dead. So it was able to tune in. The only problem I had was this is one of the kind that has the countersink on the tuning, so you could just spin it and watch it go all the way across. So I went to go show a friend that neat feature, and I spun it a little too hard and the dial string broke. So that's going to be fun. But other than that, I was able to get it to tune on FM, so I knew it worked. I do think that there's this has 2 speakers in it. It's got the large speaker here, and it has an electrostatic tweeter. I think the electrostatic tweeter is dead, and they usually are. So not sure how to deal with that. I haven't really looked much up on it. So anyhow, the dial lamp was also dead, and it uses a funky Osram 7-volt 0.3 amp screw-in bulb. I can't seem to find the right one, so I may have to use a 46, which is a 6.3 0.25 amp. Hopefully it would be bright enough. Otherwise I could try to look for an LED option. I don't really want to change out the socket, but if worse comes to worse, I guess I could. I'm not as concerned about keeping this radio new. I mean, not new old stock, but preserving it quite as much as I would, you know, one of the other antique radios. I guess for me, anything above 1950 isn't really an antique, although that's kind of silly. But anyway, that's kind of how I think. So the other thing is that this also uses a tuning eye tube, which was dead, and it's taken me 2 years to basically find all the tubes that this needs. They're all European tubes. The EL84 is easy enough to find in a modern version, which actually I did do. I bought a JJ tube for that, and I just actually bought that last month, so I figured now's the time to get to it, because over the last couple of years I've slowly but surely gotten all the tubes. Some of them were a bit pricey. The FM tube was pretty pricey, but I did finally find one that was only $16. Some of the other tubes in there, there's a triple diode triode tube that was kind of expensive. It's an EABC 80, but I picked one of those up about 4 months ago, or actually I picked up 2. Ended up getting those for $25 for the 2. So anyhow, I finally got all the tubes. These the schematic, I have one that I downloaded for this. It's in German. I'm gonna ask around. Just Radios carries European repair manual, so I'm gonna email them and see if maybe they happen to have more than just the schematic I have, because the schematic's in German and my German isn't all that up to snuff. So anyhow, I'm gonna pull the chassis out here. I do see that it does have grommets. They're actually kind of squishy, so I've never actually taken the chassis out of here. The one of the volume control knob, it's got, I already took them off, but it took me a really long time. It's got these outside bits and then an inside bit. These are not concentric, they're just a single control. So I guess if you want to turn it quick, up, loud, fast, I don't know. And then these go on like that. So I did, like I said, have a really hard time getting one of these off. I finally coaxed this off. It took about a half an hour. I don't even know why it was stuck. There's really no reason it should have been stuck. There was no schmutz on it. But whatever. So I was able to get it off, and I just had to be very careful because I don't know if I could replace this glass, and I wouldn't even know where to look. But I suppose if I need to find some parts for this thing, I'm going to be doing a lot of research. Now, the cabinet is in good condition everywhere except the top. And I'm going to see if I can zoom in on that. If you can see, I just don't feel like taking this camera off. You can see up here somebody spilled something on here that affected the finish. I haven't tested to see if this is lacquer. I'm going to assume it's lacquer, but if not, I'll deal with it then. So what I figure I'll do, it's just the top, like I said, that's bad, and I haven't even checked to see if this is veneered. My assumption would be that it is. Yeah, it's veneered, but it's a pretty thick veneer. So I may just sand this a little bit, and this may be my first candidate to use a brushing lacquer, because the sides and the front and the bottom and the back, all the wood is fine and the finish is fine. So that I just don't want to. I don't want to pull the whole thing apart and refinish it just because there's a couple spots on top. So I'll just try to deal with the top spots. So, what else about this thing? I don't really know much about European radios, except for they're big and a lot of people think they're kind of ugly. So, good thing the grill cloth actually, I believe this one is still available. I did do a little bit of research and found a site in the UK that actually weaves replacement fabric for European radios, and I believe this is one that is available, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So it'll be kind of nice to see what this thing sounds like once it's up. I'm assuming that should sound pretty good. It's not a stereo one. They did make them, obviously. In fact, actually, there were 2 of these European radios that day. I picked this one up for, I think it was $45. There was a Telefunken that had stereo speakers. It looked pretty much the same as this. Most of the German radios I've ever seen, they almost all look alike. But the Telefunken was stereo, not on the AM or FM band, but it was stereo if you had a phono or a tape input. Now this one does have a phono input on the back, another funky German type thing. The phono plugs in here. These, oop, you can't see that. Alright, the phono plugs in here, and this here is for the FM antenna input, which is actually right here. So it kind of comes out the back of the radio and plugs into that. And this here would be for an external AM antenna. This one has a fixed AM antenna on a ferrite rod, fairly modern. And one of the other things actually about the Telefunken that they had that I didn't want to bid on both of them. So, and the Telefunken actually came up for bid afterwards. If I hadn't bid on this one, I got there late and I didn't get to see all the radios. So if I had known that they had a Telefunken as well, I actually probably would have bid on that one. The Telefunken actually was neat. It had the antenna was mounted on a pole in here, and one of the knobs up here, it did have a concentric knob, I think. But one of the knobs actually would turn the antenna, so you didn't have to mess, with the radios. Usually you put it in a nice spot, and then you end up finding out you have to, if you want to get great reception on the station you wanted, you'd have to turn the radio. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the chassis out on that one, and let's see what it looks like. Alright, I managed to get this out of the cabinet. That was rather interesting. I ended up having to disconnect this tone control. and I had to desolder the speaker, but it's out. And I actually immediately started kind of cleaning up a little bit and then taking an inventory. This is actually going to be kind of fun because I ended up, it took me a couple of minutes to realize that this can here is actually the rectifier. I kept looking around for it being a capacitor, but anyway, so I'm wondering if I can restuff that, with just a regular bridge rectifier, which I do have around here. So it's got a dual 50 microfarad cap here. I actually tested that, and it's both sections read at 53, and it's actually not leaky. So I mean, I'm still gonna restuff it, but anyhow, pretty close quarters in here. Should be kind of fun. So, got your typical paper caps. Let's see, zoom in here. Typical tube type radio. Let's see, we've got I think these are polystyrene. The schematic does tell you that obviously we can tell the metal ones are polystyrene electrolytic here. Supposedly this always goes bad. It's an electrolytic, so it's being replaced anyway. We got paper caps in here. Some more down in here. It does look like somebody did a repair at some point because there's two, and now I can't find them. Oh, there they are. There are two Sprague orange drops in here. They look pretty old. So somebody was in here at some point. Everything else looks original. It all has German names on it. So let's see. So basically I'm just going to go through here and identify the paper caps and see if I've got them. I'm going to have to order electrolytics because I do not have anything near 50 that's over 250 volts. So I'm going to probably order some of the CS series, the pencil caps from Mauser. This one here is a 90 volt, I believe that was, and there's another electrolytic kicking around in here. It's also 16 volts. Everything else is either polystyrene or paper or whatever these are. They look like polypropylene, but I don't think that was one of the items on the list. The schematic has little dots on it to show what material they're made out of. However, like I said, it looks like these caps and the polystyrene are both listed as polystyrene. So close quarters. Like I said, it's going to be kind of fun. A lot of cleanup. I spent a little bit of time loosening up the volume control. I was thinking I could probably just swap it out, but it's one of those high value. It's 2 megs and it's got at least one tap on it. So those can be even a lot of fun to try to locate. But I was able to loosen up the, you can't see that. I was able to loosen up the grease here, so it turns now. And I guess I really should get in there and take it apart. It's just there's several wires connected to it, and these German folks use some pretty thinly insulated wiring. I don't know what the insulation material is. Plus, all the wiring in here is solid and not stranded, so I have to be careful not to excuse me, break any of that. So I'll just start testing stuff out, cleaning it up. I did manage to clean up the back of the the tuning, the dial area. The dial is off under protection. I cleaned that up a little bit. It's got some paint flecked off from, looks like they used this adhesive foam, this foam tape with adhesive, and whatever the adhesive is that was on the glass turned the gold paint in the lines green. So I'm going to see if I can use a toothpick to scrape that off and maybe back paint it over with some translucent brass, because the light's supposed to shine through. I cleaned up the indicators for the tone controls and hit them a little bit, at least the front end, and I hit them a little bit with some plastic polish because they were kind of cloudy. I guess the dirt and whatever, probably cigarette smoke, etched into the plastic. Now I'm going to have to figure out how to clean them on the bottom, the back sides, because they slide in underneath here and disappear. So I'm not sure how I'm going to get to the back ends of those. Very carefully, I assume. And like I said, I do have the schematic, and it does sort of have a dial string outline on it. Everything I've read on these things basically said if the dial string breaks, you're going to have a lot of fun trying to figure it out, because it's kind of complicated how it winds through these spindles and then over to the tuning condenser. The tuning condenser is connected up to the, I'm assuming this is the FM portion, so I'm going to have to figure out how to get in there. I think there are some components that do need to be replaced, assuming that's what's in the dotted line. If that is what's in the dotted line, then no, the dotted line must be the other side, because I recognize those caps. So see if I can get into this unit. It doesn't really look like, it looks like it'll slide off with these screws taken out. So a bunch of cleanup, as I mentioned. And anything else? No. I'm going to go ahead and upload this video so you guys can see that I'm starting it. And what else was I going to show you? That was pretty much it. The fuse is good, but I already knew that because it does light. So the fuse that's in there, I'm assuming was replaced, because it's got a 1 amp fuse in there and it should be 0.6. So I actually believe I have a 0.6. I bought a bunch of these smaller fuses that this thing takes. So anyhow, it's a start. This may drive me nuts. We'll find out. Oh, the tweeter is definitely not working. Well, I'm assuming it's not working, because I was reading some stuff online, and they've got foam, and they have a Mylar type film, and the foam's definitely going to be worn out, because the foam everywhere else is worn out. So it can be rebuilt, and apparently the way you rebuild it is by going to buy a 99-cent Mylar balloon at the Dollar General store. So see if I can get that working. And we'll also need to double check, because it's an electrostatic. It connects to one of these lines over here, and it runs at 170 volts. And if not, I guess I can splice in in the regular speaker socket a tweeter. I wonder how that'll perform, but I guess we'll find out if I have to do that. But I'll give it a shot anyway. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.